Most of the time, what makes jazz chords great is that you don't just play chord grips. You can add things around the chord and also use that to connect the chords, making the music flow. You probably already know how the first few times you learn a new chord, then you play that and it sounds great, but even chords with a lot of extensions become boring after a while. And what you really want to learn is what you can do with the chord. Give it some movement and change the color so that you go from to something that looks complicated but is actually surprisingly simple and easy to get started with, like using pentatonic chords. And this is actually not as complicated as it looks or sounds. I'll show you. I'm going to focus on the major 7th chord because that's very often the place where the progression stops and where you need to work a little to keep it interesting. This is sort of in 2 steps. If you're not completely new to jazz chords, then you probably know that if you play a C major 7, then you can replace that with a C6 chord. So when you're playing C major 7, then you can also play this C6, or for this C major 7, you can play this one. This is already giving you some options, but having 2 chords is not enough because the 7th and the 6th are actually a whole step apart. So you can also add a chromatic note in between them, and the basic version of that already gives you something like this. But you can also use it with really simple shell voicings and create small, interesting melodies, and that will actually teach you something else that's very useful. For this to work, then you need to find the 7th in your own major 7 chord voicings. But checking out the chords so that you know where the notes are is actually something that's incredibly useful and something that will open up for a lot of options later. Playing these chromatic phrases can be a little bit tricky, but they're worth the effort, and focus on finding the practical ones that are easy to play so that you can use them in a lot of places. Most of the concepts in this video are not something that I learned from Barry Harris. In fact, I'm not even sure he would really like all of them, to be honest, but this one and also the next one are something that I picked up in an exercise that I got from him using drop 2 voicings. Here you also have the 7th going to the 6th, but there's something else happening as well. The other thing that you see in that drop 2 exercise is that the 9th is moving down to the root, but you don't always need to use them together. They both sound great by themselves. Check out this example where I'm using the 9th to the root with a major 6-9 chord. And again, this is about going over your chords, finding the 9th, and then figuring out a way to add this movement in there. Now, before I start combining the chords with pentatonic scales, then check out this version that combines it with the major 7th, moving down to the 6th, similar to the Barry Harris exercise. But here I'm also using a really beautiful major 7-9 chord that you definitely want to have in your vocabulary. Pentatonic scales are amazing for jazz chords. You probably already know that it's very common to superimpose pentatonic scales over the chords when you're soloing. And you can use that to get some great sounding, but also very different sounding lines. But you can also do this with chords and it sounds amazing. For C major 7, then E minor pentatonic is a great sound because you get a mix of the notes that are going to get the sound of the chord across and some great sounding extensions. You can think of this pentatonic scale position. And a practical way to get some chords for that could be just playing 3 notes at a time, like this. And that sounds amazing if you put it to use. And here I'm also adding sort of an extra trick. I love adding that extra chord at the end to create this huge voicing with all the strings ringing, but you can of course also do a lot with simpler things that still sound great. Here I'm also using some harmonics, and I'm going to get to that later in the video, but first there's another great option for pentatonic scales that you also want to explore. The other pentatonic scale that you want to check out is the pentatonic scale from the 7th of the chord. So for C major 7, that's B minor pentatonic. Again, you have the notes that are essential for the chord, so E and B, but you also have some really beautiful extensions giving you 9, sharp 11, and 13. Really a Lydian sound, a C major 7, sharp 11. And you can put that to use with 3-note chords, just like the E minor pentatonic scale. But you can also change how you're playing those 3-note chords. Check out how there's a lot more space to this sound. The last concept is to add artificial harmonics, which is also a really nice trick, especially for ballads. This is a technique. First, check out this example, and then I'll explain how it works and how you play it. Notice how I'm really playing a super common major 7 chord here. What I'm doing here is playing artificial harmonics on the notes of the chord. I have this C major 7, and then with my right hand I just touch the string with my index finger above the fret wire, 12 frets above, so that's 1 octave above the note that I'm holding in the chord. And then I'm plucking that with my ring or middle finger. It takes a little bit of practice, but it isn't super difficult and definitely worth the effort, since it adds a completely different sound to what you're playing, while you're just using a common major 7 voicing. You can do much more complicated things with this, but already the simple version is a great sound to add in there. An easy variation is that you can actually strum a simple bar chord like this as well. It's the same principle, but you're just moving your hand across several strings to get the harmonics. For that, I'll use a G major 7, since that's a more friendly key for that voicing. A lot of this is about getting inspired, getting ideas for things that sound great. And one of my biggest inspirations for jazz chords and chord solos is Joe Pass. The music that he made with just a guitar is absolutely amazing. And this jazz blues solo is, in my opinion, the perfect jazz blues solo on guitar, mixing blues phrases, bebop and chord solos. Check it out.